My name is Lauren Pond. I'm the Behavior Specialist for the district, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, just in case you didn't know what those letters mean. And what I'm going to talk about today, it's a presentation called Tips and Tools for Better Behavior. And what we are presenting is, as Pamela said, we're discussing behavior. So just starting out, this is really about your child and their behavior. So do you struggle with getting your child to follow directions, give up preferred toys, learn a daily routine, share with his sibling? And there's probably lots of other examples that y'all can think of. But these are just a few that we want to talk about. And we want to talk about them so that we can offer up some solutions to help you guys out, so that you can help teach your child better, more appropriate behaviors, and that will make your lives easier and definitely make their lives easier. Again, this is a no judgment zone. We have probably heard just about every behavior scenario you can think of. And as Pamela mentioned, at the end of the presentation, as long as we have enough time, we were going to do an activity and definitely answer any questions that y'all have had. So if something comes up during the presentation, please make a note, but we'd be happy to discuss it afterwards. And again, we are here to help. That's our job today, is just to help you guys out. So again, we can help you and your children. Okay, so first, I want to start off by talking about the behavior ABCs. And those ABCs, they mean something, and they have very, very important meanings. So the A in the behavior ABC equals antecedent. And that is what happened immediately before the behavior. The B equals behavior, and this is the child's behavior. This is the behavior, it could be referring to a behavior, a good behavior you want to see, but usually in this context, it's a behavior that you don't want to see again, some type of interfering or problem behavior. The C equals consequence, what changed immediately after the behavior. And I want to clarify here, because a lot of times when we hear the word consequence, we think of something bad. That's not necessarily the case when you're looking at behavior. And I'll give you an example here in a minute to illustrate that. But really, we're just talking about what happens immediately after. These three pieces are very important because these are the three pieces that are going to tell you what's going on with your child, when are they most likely to engage in the behavior you're looking at, and what's maintaining that behavior. That's what these pieces tell us. And really, the first step to helping your child is to identify the ABCs of her behavior. So here I have this little chart that I made, and there's several examples. So here there's an antecedent part to it, then there's a behavior part, and then the consequence. So I'm just going to go over some examples just to clarify the ABCs. So the first antecedent, Dad tells Daisy to hang up her backpack. So that's what comes before the behavior. That's an instruction. So Daisy hangs up her backpack. There's the behavior. And again, in this case, that's probably a behavior you want to see. It's a good behavior. And the consequence is Dad thanks Daisy. So this is an example, again, the consequence here, that's nothing bad. That's a nice consequence. So you kind of see how you're looking at those different ABCs. So Dad can say, yeah, when I tell Daisy to hang up her backpack, she hangs it up, I tell her thank you, we're good to go. The next example, so the antecedent, Mom tells Lucy no when she asks for the iPad. So Lucy, Mom, can I have the iPad? Mom says no. Lucy screams. That's probably a behavior you don't want to see again or hear again. And then the consequence, Mom gives Lucy the iPad to stop the screaming. So this is an example where you kind of see why it's good to start looking at the ABCs. Because here, Mom got the screaming to stop, which is typically a good thing. We don't want to hear screaming. But if you start to kind of take a look at the situation and realize Lucy's screaming got her the iPad. That got her something good, something that she wants. We just taught her that screaming gets you good things. And what do you think's going to happen the next time she wants something and is told no? You might hear that screaming again. So again, you kind of see this is why we look at those ABCs and start to go through this process. The last example, the antecedent, is Dad tells Jesse to set the table. Jesse throws his shoes at Dad. Dad tells Jesse to go to his room. So again, antecedent, so he's giving Jesse an instruction. Instead of following through, Jesse does, again, I think most of us would consider throwing shoes inappropriate. And then Dad tells Jesse to go to his room, which is, again, that's not an atypical reaction. Sometimes being sent to your room is considered, a disciplinary action. But if you notice, Jesse, he got out of the instruction. He never followed through on what Dad said. So if Jesse throwing his shoes continues to be a problem, and we look at the ABCs, all these different pieces, we can see that even though Dad's trying something, he's trying to fix it, he realizes he's not following through with the original instruction, and what he's actually doing is providing reinforcement for throwing his shoes. So it happens all the time. You accidentally reinforce a behavior you don't want to. So that's why we talk about this process. I'm looking at the ABCs of behavior, because it can give us insight into what's going on. Why are we seeing this behavior? When are we seeing it? What's keeping it going? What's reinforcing it? And the next step is, so we're looking at what is the function of the behavior. So all behaviors have a function. Everything we do, there's a reason for it. Now, we don't always think about it. A lot of our behaviors just happen automatically. But it's important to know this function when we're wanting to change the behavior. So here, the function just equals why. Why are we seeing this behavior? Why is this person doing this particular behavior? Several reasons. It's really a way to communicate, meeting a need, make something good stay or appear, even behavior corrections. And I put that in there because sometimes people like attention. People like to interact with other people, and that is a good thing. But sometimes when we provide attention, even in the form of, you're scolding or correcting, that may still function as, oh, they're giving me attention. I like this. So if it's a behavior that we don't want to see again, we may be, again, accidentally reinforcing it. It also can make something unpleasant go away. So if there's something we don't want to do. So these are all examples of the different functions. And we talk about this because the next step to helping your child is to understand why she is engaging in that behavior. So again, we've looked at the ABCs. We've figured out what behavior we're talking about. What are the antecedents? What's happening before? What's the consequences? What's happening after? We then use that information to figure out why. That's why on that slide, as I was going over the examples, I kind of talked through, well, take a look at, why are we seeing this? So, with Jesse and throwing his shoes, there's a good chance that he never wanted to set the table, so he learned throwing my shoes gets me out of it. So that would be the function. For him, it's probably making something unpleasant go away. I don't feel like doing that chore. And it works for him. So you're going to continue to see the shoe throwing behavior. So you kind of see, looking at all these pieces, how when you separate them out and really start to examine it, you can figure out what's going on, especially if it's a behavior that's been problematic and very persistent. Again, I use the term interfering behavior. So something has been interfering and we need to fix it. So these are the first two steps, and very, very important to fixing that behavior. So what I'm going to be talking about next, first I want to focus on proactive strategies. So these are things you can do ahead of time. So this is the antecedent side. But changes you can make before you even see the problem behavior that will hopefully set your child up for success. So we'll talk about, here's some different examples. I'm going to go over each one of these. But the idea is that by utilizing these, you are more likely to see good behaviors and less likely to see those problem behaviors. All right, so I'm going to start off with visuals. So if you think about what visuals do you use every day? So here's an example. When I was driving over to Cisneros, just driving, I was thinking about all the different visuals I would see. I mean, we really couldn't drive if we didn't have visuals. I need to be able to see stop signs. We have stoplights. We have signs, saying, the road goes this way, or on our phones. Our phones are just one big visual. We have so much that we're looking at, different movies, different apps, just looking at the calendar function. So visuals are everywhere, and we all use them. So utilizing visuals to help out your child's behavior is just, it's a normal part of everyone's life. You're just figuring out which visuals would be helpful for problem behaviors. Using a visual for your child can help them understand what is happening next, in that moment, and during an activity. So as you can see here, this kind of visuals sort of cover, you have future events, what's going on now, and while something's going on, and then also what's coming up. It kind of lets them know this is what's happening next, so they're able to prepare for whatever's coming next. Visuals can also help with communication, independence, and almost any skill you're trying to teach. You can incorporate visuals in just about anything. I have some examples up here. This is called a token board. And this can be very helpful when you're trying to delay giving a reward. So here the reward, it says, I am working for computer. And then underneath there's 5 boxes, and then there's a total of 5 stars. 2 of them are already in the boxes. But the idea is that if you are giving your child some kind of task, you can ask them ahead of time, what do you want to work for? They pick the computer. And then whatever it is that they're doing, throughout that task, you provide a star. So here they have 5 opportunities to earn those stars. Once they get all 5, then they get the computer. Token boards, you can use them with just about anything, just about anywhere. Here, this is just an example of a timer. You can get these anywhere, a digital timer, but a lot of times kids like to see how much time is left or how much time is going. That visual can really help them out. And I think we like that too. I know that if I'm doing something, I like to know, like even in this presentation today, we gave you a time limit. We're not going to be here till 5 o'clock. We kind of set limits as to what's going on. That's always helpful for anyone to kind of get the idea of how much time you're spending on something. This is just a stop sign. This can be placed somewhere. Maybe you want your child to actually physically stop. They use that at a lot of schools in the hallways. You can put it up in front of a door where maybe you don't want your child to go into or go past, anywhere where you want your child to stop. Down at the bottom, this is called, this is a task analysis where you're breaking up, you're basically breaking up a schedule. So there's pictures. In this case, it's getting up in the morning. The first picture says good morning. So when you're letting your child know you're waking up. The next picture shows them actually awake, waking up in their bed, then using the toilet, then having breakfast, then grooming, so brushing their teeth, their hair, and then getting dressed. There's their clothing. So what this does, this can be used before and throughout their morning routine. You can even discuss it the night before to let them know what to expect, but it breaks down the task or the routine of getting up in the morning so they know what's expected of them and each step of the way. This visual is a thermometer, and this one's working a little bit more on emotions. So down at the bottom, you see the green, and it shows somebody calm and happy, and this can help kids kind of pair their own feelings with this visual, so when they're feeling calm and happy, you can teach them, oh, this is how you're feeling, and eventually they can let you know, they can communicate through that. There's lighter green is sad, yellow, orange, scared, anxious, and then up here as you get to, there's a darker orange, and then up here at red, the darkest color, they're angry or mad. So again, you can use that to help them label their feelings, and they can also use it as a tool to label their feelings for you. And this last visual is just a person sitting in a chair. So you can use this again as an antecedent. Okay, we're going to be sitting soon. Remember, they can have it during their task or during when they're supposed to sit. And again, just as a reminder for that expectation. So I've kind of just given you a few examples, but you can see how many visuals and how they can be used in so many different ways. I have some examples that y'all can just pass around. The first one is a daily schedule, and it has on one side to do, and the other side it has all done. So here you can have all the different tasks they need to do, and as they're completed, they move them over. So if anybody here has ever had a to-do list and you check things off, it's kind of the same concept, but instead they're using pictures and actually moving those pictures. This one is a first then, which I'll be talking about later. And it has one square where there's first, and the one following it is then. So first, here's the expectation, then here's what happens. This is an example of that breakdown of the routine. This is brushing teeth. So brushing teeth, we say brushing teeth, but if you think about it, it's really made up of a bunch of different behaviors. Just like getting up in the morning, you say getting ready in the morning, that's really a bunch of small behaviors. So here we're breaking it down. Brushing teeth, toothbrush, toothpaste, putting toothpaste on the brush teeth, rinse mouth. So you have those different steps. You can teach your child, you can do it with them, teach them to use it independently. And then last, I am working 4, so this is again another token board. This one has 10 instead of 5. You can put whatever number is appropriate for your child. Let them pick. If you have pictures or photographs, they put it in there. You can use whatever tokens you want. I've used little stars like that. I've used pennies, pieces of paper. You can check with a dry erase marker, whatever you have. So I'll pass those around if you want to take a look. So again, visuals are extremely important. They can be so helpful for children to prompt, again, what they should be doing, what they are doing, what's coming next. I mean, again, just about anything you're trying to teach them. And we'll be talking about visuals. A lot of these interventions overlap, so you'll kind of see that some of the other things I talk about include visuals. Okay, next I want to talk about choices. So allow your child to choose between 2 or more available options. And here you kind of see my example. There's a hand with a finger. They have a choice between an apple and an orange, and they're selecting the orange, so they're making a choice. And this is what it sounds like. Again, you're giving your child options and letting them pick. So you are including them in the decision-making process. So some examples that I have, would you like to put on your red sneakers or your black sneakers? Do you want to start your homework in 3 minutes or 5 minutes? Do you want to walk by yourself, hold my hand, or hold Daddy's hand? So if you notice here, so again, just some examples, there's thousands of examples I could give you that you could offer up on a daily basis. But the idea is that you're giving them some freedom of choice. You're allowing them to have some say in their expectations. But I want to point out one thing. Notice that all these choices, you are okay with whatever choice they make. So here, the first one, red sneakers or black sneakers, they still have to wear shoes because some kids may say, I don't want to wear shoes to school. You have to wear shoes to school. Do you want the red ones or the black ones? Here, you have to do your homework, but do you want to start it in 3 minutes or 5 minutes? So you're still following through on what they need to do, but you're giving them some choice in the matter. And that can really help kids complete difficult tasks or do things they wouldn't normally want to do. And again, it's okay to give more than 2 options, but just make sure that whatever options that you offer, you're okay with whatever choice they make. I do have a caution. Make sure to teach your child that sometimes choices are not available. So just like with anything that we suggest, you start off and you use it as needed. But what's going to happen as your child gets older, or maybe they are already older, we sometimes don't get choices in life. Again, if I pull up to a red stop sign, I have to stop. I mean, I guess I could drive through, but probably good things wouldn't happen if I did that. So you do want to start, as you have some success with this, you do want to start well, no, right now we have to do this, but later on, I'll let you pick something else. So we do need to show them that choices are available, because we do all get a choice with most things, or a lot of things in life, but some things we don't. So we want to kind of teach them both, but that's where you can incorporate some of those visuals. Right now I need you to do this, so let's follow, the visual, and then later on I'll let you make a choice for whatever you need to do. All right, let's look at sensory strategies. So here, learning the triggers is important. So that's why, again, we're looking at the antecedent side. Some of your kids, some of the students we work with, they do have certain sensory triggers. And it's something involving their senses, just as it sounds like. It could be that something's too loud, there's a light that's too bright, just something's bothering them. And that can cause problem behaviors. So the idea here is, if you're aware, if you learn the trigger to any problem behavior associated with something sensory, if you can modify before it happens, then you won't see the problem behaviors. So by providing sensory support before a situation, you can avoid a sensory meltdown. So some examples: give your child a squishy fidget toy to hold. If they like to move, or they're always grabbing things, and if you do try to get them to sit for a long time, and that might lead to, again, that meltdown or some problems, giving them something to hold and move, that would be helpful. Provide headphones or earbuds before going into a noisy store so they can block out the sound. You can even put on music or something they like to hear. And up here, I have a picture of just an example of some headphones that can be used. I mean, you can use, I've seen kids with earbuds, I'd seen them with the full ear, whatever you have, whatever works. Give your child a chew tube to wear around her neck. Up here, I have a picture of a green chew tube. And this is just, if y'all haven't seen it, it's a real, it's squishy, but not too squishy. And if your child puts a lot of things in their mouth, they walk around picking things up and just chewing on things, sometimes that it's definitely not sanitary, but it can also be dangerous. We don't want them to put things in their mouth that they shouldn't. What you can do is you can teach your child, you can have them have it in their pocket, or even put it around their neck on a string or a bandana. And anytime they feel the need to chew, you can teach them just to chew it right there. Provide movement breaks on a regular schedule. This really helps. I mean, especially with the younger kids, we all need to move at some point. Nobody, if you're in a presentation for 5 hours, you've got to take a break and get up and move around. And it's the same thing with our kids. And some kids need more movement breaks than others, depending on their age or just their individual needs. And by allowing them, let's get up and get the wiggles out, or, take a quick break and letting them move, that can help them. That can help them feel better, so that they're ready to, keep going with whatever you're doing with them, and help, again, avoid any problem behaviors because they feel the need to move. Set up a calm area that your child can request when they need a break. I have a picture of it over here, and again, this is just an example. It can kind of look like whatever you want it to look like. This just has some blue and green mats that are against the wall and on the floor. There's a beanbag and some pillows and a blanket. They have this nice little fan to kind of cover it. But it's not too dark, but it's a little bit dark. It's, has soft pillows. It's a nice, comfortable area for your child to go. Sometimes we use these in classrooms. If you see, your child is starting to, show those behaviors that they might not be feeling well, you can say, why don't you go take a break? You can call it the break area, whatever you want to call it. But, go take a break and give them a minute to kind of calm down, regroup, and then get back to whatever it is that you're wanting to do. And again, you can make it look, it can be anywhere, you can make it look like whatever you want it to. But the idea is that you're just providing them a place where if they feel overwhelmed, they can go take a break and get control. And again, the idea is that you provide this ahead of time so that you can avoid that meltdown. So just some examples, there's a lot of sensory tools and strategies out there. These are some common ones that we use. All right, next is expectations and rules. So when people know the expectations and rules from the start, they are more likely to follow them. And again, this is really the case for anybody. If I suddenly said, ma'am, why are you sitting in that chair? And you would say, well, you told me to sit anywhere. And I said, no, that chair is reserved for somebody. Well, if I didn't tell you or tell people, hey guys, don't sit in this chair, I'm saving it for somebody, why would you not sit there? I didn't tell you the expectations of, this classroom. And so it's important for everybody to always know the expectations and the rules ahead of time. If you don't know, you can't follow the rules. And so we understand this as adults, but as the adult, you must provide these boundaries for your child. This is important for all areas of your child's life, in the present and in the future. So we want our kids to follow instructions now, but this is also crucial as they get older, or whether they're older now, but as they move on from school, we've got to know rules and expectations and follow those boundaries, whether we like them or not. But what's important is, as we're teaching our kids to follow these rules and expectations, we have to let them know what they are. So just some recommendations. Expectations should be consistent, clear, and enforceable. So I cannot emphasize the consistency piece enough. Think about it, it's really hard if every day, let's say you go into work, and they told you to sit in a different place every time, and you would go sit somewhere, no, you can't sit there today. And the next day, oh, you can't sit there. Very, very inconsistent. I might start engaging in problem behaviors if that situation happened to me. I need some consistency. And then kids are gonna learn, if you're not consistent, that you don't mean what you say. So if you set a rule and you don't have them follow through, they're gonna learn, oh yeah, she told me to do something, or he told me to do something, and I didn't do it, and wasn't really a big deal. I never had to follow through on it. I don't have to listen to them. So that consistency piece is absolutely crucial. So make sure that whatever you decide to do, you're gonna follow through. Sometimes you do have to pick and choose your battles. That's okay too. But whatever you do decide, no, this is non-negotiable, this is a rule in my house, you have to follow. Just make sure you're gonna follow through on that. Make sure they're clear. You wanna make sure that your child can understand whatever the rule or expectation is. And if they don't, you can always explain it to them or teach them. But they have to understand it before they can follow it. And then just make sure that it's enforceable. So if your child, let's say they break a rule and you say, that's it, no iPad for the next 3 months. Or computer, or pick TV, pick your child's favorite piece of technology. That might not be feasible. There may be, and that might be more of a punishment for you guys. It might be a little bit more enforceable that you've lost your iPad for the rest of the day. You can earn it back tomorrow. Because there may come a time where you've got, they need that time on the iPad. Maybe you're talking on the phone, or you need to keep them busy for whatever reason. And again, that goes back to being consistent. If you've said you've lost the iPad for the next 3 months, you end up giving it to them anyway. It's not enforceable and it's not consistent. So just think through whenever you're setting up those expectations and rules. Here's an example, our family rules. So they have at the top, they have a list of expectations, and they're pretty clear. Share, take turns, be helpful and kind, listen to mom and dad the first time. I like that one. If you take it out, put it away. And then down here at the bottom, if you don't follow the rules, here's what's gonna happen. So here, go to your room, loss of dessert or treat. In this case, there's some aversive consequences. Loss of Friday night sleepover, loss of play dates. I would even argue you could put, if you do follow the rules, here are all the good things that are going to happen. So you could even have following the rules, here's the good stuff, don't follow the rules, here's the not so good stuff. But it's up here. Now, your child may respond really well. This is another example of a visual. It's absolutely fine to list rules. You may have to simplify it for your child. It could just be verbal. It's whatever works. But the idea, here's the clear rules and expectations, and then here's what happens if you follow them. Here's what happens if you don't. Okay, looking at priming. So priming, that's giving your child a roadmap of your expectations. So again, this is kind of a broad intervention because you can use pictures, lists, rules, videos, words, whatever works. But what you're doing is, before going into a situation, you're getting your child ready for that situation. And again, this is an example of how these interventions overlap. Let's say you have to take your child to the dentist. And I know that can be a stressful situation for children and parents. So a couple days before, or the week before, you may say, hey, remember next week we're going to the dentist. So you're reminding them, you're letting them know that it's coming up pretty soon. The night before, you may have a social story. And that's just not necessarily a book, but it's just a little story that involves visuals, and it breaks down and explains a situation. So you may discuss a social story about going to the dentist. When I go to the dentist, first we wait in the waiting room, and it goes through all the steps. So you go over that with them. You can read it to your child, have them read it to you if they can. Maybe just look at some pictures, but you let them know, here's what we're doing tomorrow. Again, here's what we expect. Here's what's going to happen to you. Here's what I want you to do. When they wake up, remember, we're going to the dentist today. You can, before going into the dentist, you could, if you want to do a little schedule of expectations, you can have a picture reminding them, first dentist, then McDonald's, whatever you want to do. But the idea is that you set them up for success. You look at all the different, what can I do ahead of time to get them ready for it? So it's going to be, again, whatever works for your child, but you're just preparing them. That is almost always going to help in just about any situation. All right, then we're talking about first then. And I've already mentioned it. That was one of the examples I passed around. So for first then, this is an example of an effective strategy that uses many proactive strategies at once: visual, choice, expectations, and priming. So I have a couple examples up here. So here you have the first, and then they have, I think it's a picture of, looks like spaghetti, and it says eat dinner, then have cookie. So you got to eat your dinner first, then you can have the cookie. Down here at the bottom, first then. So first wash hands, then eat at table. So this is a very simple way to show your child the expectations. And it's so helpful because a lot of times the first is something they don't want to do, and the then is something that they do want to do. So you're letting them know you can have the good thing, you just got to do the thing you don't like first. So as I just mentioned, the first part of the strategy is the demand or the requirement that you want your child to do. This demand may have led to problem behaviors in the past. So this is why this is such an effective tool, because in the past, when you've said, all right, go wash your hands, your child may have avoided that. They didn't want to do it. Maybe they were hungry and were just ready to come to the table. Maybe they didn't want to follow the routine. So you've identified that they've kind of struggled with this particular behavior. But then the then part of the strategy is the reward, and should be something your child likes and will work for. So again, the then part can be really anything your child prefers. I mentioned the iPad. I know kids love iPads and phones. It could be, some type of treat. It could just be whatever part of the routine, like here, the child just may be hungry and ready for dinner. Again, you got to wash your hands first, then you can have it. So just some other examples. First eat dinner, then you can watch TV. First put on your shoes, then we can go to the park. First bathe, then you can read a book with mommy. So again, the examples are endless. It's just, you can just set this up and it's whatever works with your child. All right. So now we're going to move on to what I call responsive behavior strategies. So we've talked about, I gave you lots of examples and interventions of things. Everything I've talked about before are things you can do ahead of time, that you can do before you even see any problem behaviors. And the idea is that if you put those different interventions into place, hopefully you can avoid the problem behaviors altogether. But sometimes you can't. So we wanted to talk about what you can do if and when you do see some good behaviors, because we want to make sure those are reinforced. And then if you do see the problem behaviors, give you some strategies for that. So first I want to talk about reinforcement, which I've mentioned a few times. Here I have another antecedent behavior table. So I wanted to give you an example so we could talk about that. So the antecedent is Kevin calls for mom, but she doesn't answer because she is busy making dinner. Typical situation. The behavior, Kevin hits his sister. Consequence, mom runs to Kevin and scolds him. So remember we talked about, behaviors, they serve a function. There's always a why. Here, again, looking at the antecedent, this is why this is important. Kevin calls for mom, so we know he wants mom's attention. Again, not a bad thing, but mom's busy making dinner. She can't provide attention in that moment. Unfortunately, though, Kevin hits his sister, and because he's probably learned when I hit my sister, mom intervenes. And again, that's not a crazy thing to do. It's good to intervene. You don't want one child hitting the other. But she runs to Kevin and scolds him, so she provides that attention. So really, he ended up getting what he wanted. And the problem is if hitting his sister becomes a problem, and he's hitting his sister constantly, especially when I'm making dinner. What do I do? So that's why, again, we're going to look at the ABCs and figure out the function, and we find out he's doing it for attention. And what's been happening, again, this is accidental, but mom has accidentally been reinforcing the behavior. So again, that's why we go through this process. So looking at and understanding reinforcement, this right there is going to help you. A lot of times when I discuss it, I'll see people, they're like, oh, they kind of, light bulb moment, because they realize I've accidentally been reinforcing, whatever behavior I didn't want to see. But reinforcement is when something changes following a behavior that increases that behavior, i.e., you see that behavior again. I mentioned every behavior has a function. And if you're seeing any behavior, good or bad, it means it's being reinforced somehow. So good behaviors, keep doing what you're doing. That means, you're reinforcing them and seeing what you want. But you really only reinforce desired behaviors that you want to see again. Because if you're reinforcing behaviors you don't, you're going to keep seeing them until that reinforcement stops. This is why it is important to learn the function of the behavior, because sometimes we accidentally reinforce an inappropriate behavior. So right here, if you're thinking about, child's behavior, something that you're seeing a lot, you may already be realizing, again, okay, what I'm providing, what's happening after that behavior, it's an accidental reinforcer. And right there, that's step one. Identifying that piece is the first step, because you can't change your own behavior until you understand what's going on with the antecedents and consequences. So it's important to understand that reinforcement piece. And it's not just for bad behaviors. We want to understand it for that side. But as I said, if you're seeing good behaviors, that means you're reinforcing it somehow. So keep doing whatever it is you're doing with that behavior. So just some reinforcer ideas. Reinforcers are individual. There's a lot of common reinforcers. I mentioned the iPad because, cell phones, kids and adults love them. But there's certain reinforcers that one child may like, another one has no interest in. Look for free reinforcers first. For example, tickles, hugs, smiles, praise, special time with parents, screen time, anything that's already readily available in the environment already. If you're kind of wondering, maybe you have a child that doesn't have a lot of interests, but if you think about, if left to your child's own device, what does he gravitate towards? That can give you some ideas for reinforcers. Continuously reevaluate your child's reinforcers. They won't last forever, so plan ahead and be creative. Sometimes you may have a toy that your child just loves, and for a few weeks they can't get enough of it, and then they suddenly start to lose interest, and you'll pull it, hey, do you want to play with this? And that's normal. We all get satiated on certain things. Even things that we love, we might get sick of. A new song comes out, we can't stop listening to it. After a few weeks, all right, I've kind of had enough of the song. That's normal. So definitely always keep an eye on what your child likes. And again, if you're trying to change a behavior, make sure that you have available reinforcers that they're still interested in. Really, if the interest goes away, it's not going to be a reinforcer anymore. Have backup reinforcers and more backups, just to make sure, again, when you're trying to teach a behavior, that you're always ready. Consider non-traditional items or items used in non-traditional ways. There was a student that I had been told about who liked to lick. And of course, that wasn't really safe or sanitary, and so they replaced it with, he had a little chalkboard, and they would let him put a wet sponge, because I guess he liked to watch it dry, so he would kind of paint it. So that was definitely creative and unusual, but it was a good replacement, and he loved doing it, so he would work for it. Be the giver of good things, become the chocolate chip cookie. And what I mean by the chocolate chip cookie, and you guys probably are, as parents, your kids love you, you are the provider of good things, but we tell this to teachers, just, teach them, I provide good things. Yes, you do have to listen to me and follow the rules, and there's expectations, but you're going to get lots of good things from me, especially if you follow instructions and listen, do what you're supposed to. Some pictures. Here's that slime. I know it's been it's been popular. It's popular with young kids, and I think there's even like middle school and high school kids that liked it. I think there's recipes to make it at home. It's real squishy and kind of feels weird. You can use food coloring to change the color, your child's favorite color. Here's just a little guy getting his feet tickled. A little toy car. Here's that chocolate chip cookie. And then there's the iPad I mentioned, any type of technology. But, again, it's whatever your child likes. I would recommend saving the most favorite things for the most difficult situations. So if they're really struggling with, maybe getting dressed in the morning, save that favorite, whatever it is, and say, give them enough time in the morning so that they have a few minutes with that toy. Because again, if they have it all day, every day, they may get sick of it. We don't want them to get sick of it. We want it to stay valuable so we can use it to teach replacement behaviors. Nice segue there. So here we're going to talk about teach replacement behaviors. So there's something called the fair pair rule. And what this is when you replace an inappropriate behavior with a desired behavior. So if your child screams and you want them to stop screaming, you need to replace it with something else. You need to teach your child what to do instead of what not to do. By teaching a new skill, you will replace the inappropriate behavior before your child replaces it themselves with something you may not like. And this could happen if your child screams and you're, okay, I'm not going to reinforce the screaming anymore. They may start throwing their shoes at you instead. So we don't want them to replace it with something inappropriate. So that's why it's so important. Instead of screaming, so we've already figured out the function. Let's say they're doing it for attention. We're going to teach them to, come find you and say mommy or daddy. So that's the replacement behavior. So just some other examples with sharing toys. You replace grabbing toys from sister with asking for the toy. So again, you just teach them, hey, when you're sitting, make sure you ask, say, I want the toy, please. And, you can teach them or give them the language. If they're nonverbal, you can teach them to use a picture, whatever form of communication. Doing a chore, replace screaming with giving a picture or word card to ask for a break. I have an example up here. Again, you just find these on the internet. You can make them yourself. But it's just a card where the person's kind of relaxing and saying, I need a break. So you can teach them that instead of screaming, you hand me this card, you can take a quick break, and then you can start your chore. Wanting attention, replace hitting brother with tapping dad on the shoulder. So again, the idea with this is that whenever you're looking at, okay, I don't want to see this behavior anymore, what do I want to see them doing? That's what I need to teach. So that's the fair pair rule. That's the replacement. And really, anytime you see a problem behavior and you want to change it, you should always have an alternative, something else to teach them. Okay. All right, catch good behaviors. So pay attention to desired behavior and provide specific praise. For example, I love the way you are putting the dishes in the sink. That's more specific than good job. So, we often feel compelled to provide corrective feedback, but not praise. And really, isn't that the truth? I always hear that expression, you're only as good as your last mistake. I mean, you can do something perfectly, and you may not hear anything, but the second you do something wrong, then you hear something. And I think it's just human nature. We're all kind of built to react like that. But what would that look like if it were reversed? And that's what we're talking about here. Instead of, your child's being good, let's say they've been really quiet and they're, following instructions, doing what they need to do, you're busy with something, then suddenly they start screaming. You may have missed 20 minutes of good behavior before they engaged in the problem behavior, and then you suddenly provide attention or, attend to it. So this is something where you're going to have to remind yourself to do it. And the good thing is you can pick any good behavior, especially if your child's really struggling or you're seeing a lot of problem behaviors. The good behavior can be anything. It could just be them walking into the house and, maybe putting their backpack in the right spot. Yay, you put your backpack in the right spot. Good job. It's okay to pick something, but it's just to show them, yes, you're doing this right. I'm letting you know. You're reinforcing that behavior, making sure it's getting addressed. This is, again, caught you being good. That's the idea. I'm seeing you do good things. I'm acknowledging. Aim for using specific praise with your child 10 to 20 times each hour. That's just an example, but as I said, the idea is that you're going to have to remind yourself because, again, it's very easy to forget. When kids are doing what they're supposed to, we tend to just think, okay, good, great, and then we don't address behavior until we see something we don't want to see. Make sure you are addressing that good stuff too. Set your child up for success. And remember, we all need praise. I mean, isn't it nice, whether at work or at home, somebody acknowledges something. It might be something you do every day, but they're like, you did such a good job on that. We all really like that. It's always a nice feeling. It makes us feel better. And I am doing a good job on that. I'm going to keep working hard. Same thing with our kids. They like to hear that they're doing something well. And especially if, they're struggling with some problem behaviors, they might be hearing a lot of corrections. So it's also important for all kids to hear about the good stuff that they do too. And I think as parents, you appreciate that, if the school's only calling you about problems versus letting you know, hey, we're calling you about good stuff too. So it's good for everybody. Okay, so now we're going to look at a couple of strategies for when you do see the problem behaviors. So far, we've been focusing more on good behaviors. But as I said, it's likely, you're going to see some problem behaviors. You may already be seeing problem behaviors. So these are behaviors that you want to change, and these are a couple of effective strategies to help change them. So we're looking at, again, the consequence side. So keep the demand. So this is typically when you give some type of instruction, some kind of demand, and it's something that your child doesn't want to do. So it's escape maintain behavior or avoidance. They want to avoid something. And again, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do I don't like to do chores. I don't like to clean. I like to avoid situations that make me uncomfortable, but we have to do them sometimes. It's important skill for everybody. So if you give a directive that is met with refusal, it is important to keep the demand until the task is completed. So this is part of that consistency I was talking about. So it's okay to think through and choose your directives carefully, but make sure if it's something that you want your child to do and nope, they need to do it, you're going to follow through. You're going to keep the demand. Be thoughtful about the demands you're making. So again, if it's something you're like, okay, we gotta go grocery shopping in a minute. I don't want to get them all riled up. I'll have them clean up when we get back. That's okay. But if it's something where, again, you've decided, no, they have to follow through with this. This is something they need to learn. It's important. Then I'm gonna keep the demand on that. Avoid bribery and threats. Threatening, that's never gonna help. That truly is, more punishment aversive. And bribery, that's probably one of the worst things to do. If you're giving, it's okay to offer, hey, again, first then, as an antecedent. Remember, first, if you clean up your toys, then you can have a snack. That's different than bribery because you're letting them know the expectations ahead of time and you're giving them the chance to do the right thing. If they're already not listening, so you've given them an instruction and they're refusing to do it, pulling out the reward then is not a good idea, because it's teaching them, oh, I'll engage in problem behaviors, I won't listen, and then good stuff will appear. Nope. So that's why it's important on your end, offer those rewards ahead of time. Don't do it when you start to see the problem behavior. When they don't listen to you, that's not the time to pull out the good stuff. Keep words and eye contact to a minimum, especially if you don't want to provide too much attention. Sometimes talking with your child too much, again, that could turn into, oh, I get one-on-one time with mom, this is great. Nope, we want to keep it very simple. Keep your emotions under control. I know how frustrating it can be when your child isn't listening to you, and you may start to see some other problem behavior. Maybe they started screaming, now they are throwing their shoes. But just keep yourself calm and continue to follow through. Do not provide any reinforcement until the directive is followed. And again, think back to that reinforcement piece. So if you have a behavior, whatever follows it, that if that functions as a reinforcer, you're going to see that behavior again. So you don't want to give them that reward until you see the behavior that you want, which is that original directive. So make sure if you told them to clean up their toys, don't give them anything good, the reward, until the toys are cleaned up. Keep guilty feelings out of it. Making excuses does not change the behavior. This is a learning experience. This is a teaching moment. You're teaching them that, when mom or dad or whomever gives you an instruction, you have to follow it. And that's all it is. There's nothing to feel guilty about. This is, again, it's an important skill. We all have to follow instructions. At our jobs, I used the example earlier, driving around, I have to follow the rules of the road, so to speak. So it's a very, very important skill that's going to follow them later in life. But it's also okay, consider why the child refused. Is there a skill deficit? Sometimes, we may not realize that maybe our child is struggling, they need some additional help, they actually might not have the skill or whatever it is we're asking them to do. Sometimes in class we'll realize, oh, they need a little bit of help with a prerequisite skill before we move on. So that's okay if you need to reteach something. And then what can you do to set them up for success the next time you give this directive? So maybe the next time you say, I'm definitely going to offer a reward ahead of time. I'm going to use my first then board because this time when I just said clean up your toys, I didn't get a good reaction. Next time if I say, hey, if it's time to clean up, but if you clean up your toys, you get a snack, that might make things better. So it's always okay to be thinking about, what can I do to set them up for success the next time? And you may have to try different things before you find what works. But in that moment, just follow through with whatever demand you've placed. So keep the demand example. So here's little boy tying his shoes. But we wanted to just walk you through this to show you what it might look like. So here you have mom says, please put your shoes on. Child says, no, you do it. Mom says, put your shoes on. Child says, no. So they're screaming and yelling at this point. Mom, in a calm, monotone voice with minimal eye contact, says, put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. So you get the idea. Continue until the child complies. And so you see here, so mom is calm. She's just using a nice neutral tone of voice, so she's not yelling but minimal eye contact, because this isn't a time to provide lots of attention. She's letting the child know the expectation is still here. Put your shoes on. And this is a child, by the way, they have the skill of putting their shoes on. This is an example, if you're like, wait a second, I don't know if they do know how to put their shoes on by themselves. Of course, you can help them before you place the demand. But this is a child that can do it. They know how to put their shoes on, they just don't want to. So she's just going to repeat the instruction, put your shoes on. That's my expectation, and nothing is changing until you follow through. So here I noted, you may also include strategies that we discussed previously, such as using a picture while saying the instruction. If you have a child maybe that's nonverbal, or they respond well to visuals, it's okay to, while you're saying it, put your shoes on, you may just hold a picture like this, or a picture of shoes out, again, whatever works for your child. First then, pointing to the shoes instead of saying the instruction, etc. This broken record technique may seem tiresome, but it will communicate that your directives are meant to be followed and you mean what you say. This will eventually lead to less refusal and more compliance. And this is a very basic strategy. It can be tough at the beginning, especially if your child's, there's a long history of seeing this problem behavior or interfering behavior, but this works. It's very effective, and it just takes some patience, but it makes a big difference in changing behavior. Okay, the next strategy is planned ignoring. So planned ignoring involves attention. So when attention is the reinforcer, you withhold attention. So again, thinking about that reinforcement piece, if I engage in a behavior in order to get attention, if that behavior is something you don't want to see anymore, you take away the attention piece, behavior's not getting reinforced, you shouldn't see it again. That's how reinforcement works. Planned ignoring can be difficult and time-consuming, and this is true, but it is extremely effective and worth the effort. What you're doing here, you ignore the behavior, but not the child. Because I think sometimes it's this idea, I'm just going to pretend the child's gone. No, you're still keeping an eye, you're still active and engaging in this intervention, but what you're doing is you're trying to get rid of that behavior you don't want to see anymore. So the steps for planned ignoring: find your happy place. And it could be this nice little tropical island or whatever it is for you. But the idea is that you kind of get yourself, again, calm, emotionally ready, because sometimes this can take a while, but you're ready again, just like in the keep the demand. This is something I'm going to follow through with. I may see some problem behaviors in the meantime, so I want to make sure that I'm ready to go. Make sure your child and others are safe. Safety always comes first. So if there's some unsafe situation, like your child's trying to run out of the house or something, of course you block that. You make sure that everybody's safe. But once you begin, there's no eye contact, conversations, no attention whatsoever until the problem behavior stops for at least 5 seconds. So again, if Kevin's hitting, we're going to make sure everybody's safe. So I may go and take sister and move her away. So sister's safe. But if Kevin, if he continues to scream and try to hit, I'm just ignoring that. I'm not providing any attention until he stops for at least 5 seconds. When the inappropriate behavior gets worse, planned ignoring is most likely working. It usually gets worse before it gets better. So if you think about it from your child's perspective, like if hitting people always gets me attention, if I hit and somebody always comes and talks to me, that's been my learning experience. Suddenly I'm hitting and I'm not getting attention. So what you're probably going to see, well, maybe I'm not hitting hard enough. Maybe I need to yell. Maybe I need to yell a little bit louder. Maybe I need to start climbing on the furniture. Who knows what you're going to see, but the idea is that you're probably going to see things get a little bit worse because what's been working for them isn't working anymore. So they're going to try to figure out, well, what does work? That's why we want to wait. Once they're, just calm and still for 5 seconds, then we can go in and address the situation. And this is also why we talked about teaching the replacement behaviors using all those antecedent techniques, because if you can teach them, when you do want attention, just come over and tap me on the arm or, whatever's appropriate. You're teaching them what to do. This is teaching them hitting and screaming and yelling no longer works. But just hang in there because that's normal. That's a normal part of this process. And this is what makes it tough. Because oftentimes, if your child screams for attention, they may end up screaming for a long time because, again, that's what's always worked. But we're not reinforcing that anymore. So part of the process is to teach them that. And we do that by withholding the attention. And then again, reinforcement is available when the inappropriate behavior stops. They're quiet for about 5 seconds. Then you can provide your attention because the behavior that you're reinforcing is that sitting quietly. So again, very, very effective, but it just may take some time, especially at the beginning.